No, man, but you got to keep going. What am I going to do, quit? That's not an option. You got to keep on keeping on. Life's a garden, dig it? You make it work for you. You never give up, man. That's my philosophy.
Hey gardeners, hope you're all having an awesome week. I'm just out checking out my pear tree here. We got awesome blooms, just looking beautiful here on a sunny day here in the alley garden. Look at this, just looking awesome. All right, let's get growing. All right. Welcome, all my garden enthusiasts and passionate plant people, to our Let's Get Growing live show here on the Urban Gardener channel. I'm Enoch. I am your host today, and thank you all so much for joining with us today. Here in just a little bit later on in the show, so stay tuned. We have with us Linda Vater today as our featured guest today, so really excited about that. So stay tuned for later on in the show. And here in just a little bit too, we also have with us Rochelle from Brampton Gardener. So be sure to stay tuned for our great guests coming up here in just a little bit in the show. And if you are here with us right now, be sure to hit that thumbs up, click the like button, subscribe if you haven't subscribed yet, and also hit the bell notification so you'll be notified of all of our upcoming videos and live streams here on the Urban Gardener channel. And of course, be sure to share with all your garden friends. Let them know about our awesome show here on the Urban Gardener channel and all of our awesome guests that we have here each and every week. And of course, at the top of the show, I do want to give a big shout out to all of our replay watchers. Thank you all so much for joining with us when you can during the week. And definitely be sure to get into the comment section too and let me know you're here. Let me know what you got growing on. I love hearing from every single one of you. And in fact, if you haven't yet already, go and join our Facebook group. Facebook Let's Get Growing group. We have a link right down below in the description for you there that you can follow and go and join our group and share all of your gardens with me too. This is a great place where you can share pictures and let me know what you've got growing on in your garden. I love seeing everybody's garden. I love hearing from all of you, all your great comments and everything too. So definitely keep them coming and come and join our group. Definitely. And yeah, we had a really great show last week. I want to encourage you all to go back and check out. We had a super hot pepper weekend, and it was quite the show. Just a little bit different from us. We had with us Johnny Scoville from Chase the Heat, and he shared with us all about starring in the new Hulu series Super Hots, the spicy world of pepper people, and a really fun show on Hulu. It was really great for me. A lot of the folks in that show are people that I know through the pepper community, like Johnny and others as well too. And it was just a really great show, especially for a pepper lover like myself. I love growing peppers. So we had a really fun weekend. So Johnny was on our Saturday show, and then we invited on Sunday, our Sunday edition show, we had with us Smokin' Ed Curry, the curator or cultivator of the world record Carolina Reaper and the new Guinness Book of World Record Pepper X. And he joined with us to talk all about growing peppers and gardening and all sorts of really great things that we got to talk with Ed about too when it came to growing super hot peppers. So that was a really fun weekend. I encourage everybody to go back. If you haven't had a chance to go check out those shows or those conversations, definitely go back and check those out as well too. So yes, and definitely come and check us out for our Sunday edition tomorrow as well too, because we are a Saturday and Sunday show now this year. So we have our Sunday edition, and tomorrow we'll have joining with us Rachel Andorfer from Oxheart Gardening. She's going to be joining with us to talk about getting our gardens started for the new season. So there's going to be a really great conversation. Rachel's been on the show before, and so I'm really looking forward to having her back on again for a great conversation about getting our gardens started. She has a really awesome channel over at Oxheart Gardening, so it's going to be a really great show tomorrow. So definitely be sure to come and join with us then as well too. So yeah, we got lots and lots growing on this week for us here. Just so much. And I touched on this a couple of weeks back about all of the things. It's now spring. There's tons of things growing on. I've got all sorts of little plant starts and lots of things that we've had growing from seed that we've got started. I've got tons of things that I literally just had to go out and seed and everything just the last couple of days. I've been working on my back patio garden area. It's where I have a lot of my 5-gallon water wicking containers, a lot of our elevated raised beds as well too, and just kind of been neglected a little bit this winter. I've gone out there a little bit here and there to harvest out some of our like spinach and lettuces and things like that. But this last week, everything it's been such a warm winter, like weeds have just been too much. And again, I've kind of neglected a little bit. Everything was just massively overgrown. So as I decided to tackle this project this last week, I ultimately decided to go ahead and just harvest everything up out of all of our beds. And then we'll get restarted with some new greens this week. So that was kind of my project this week, was just make sure I got everything weeded up really good. We amended our soil and got all of our containers and beds and everything all leveled out. And then I just basically this time around, usually I'll actually, even for having a small little garden in these small garden beds, I'll try to make rows of everything and kind of keep things as organized as possible. But because the project was a little bit bigger than what I was expecting this last week, I just kind of decided to kind of like free throw it. I went out there and just started, just kind of tossing seeds, I mean, a little bit here, a little bit there, not everything everywhere, but, so it's just kind of a little bit of a free flowing kind of seed dropping all over in different beds there for a bunch of our different greens and different things. So it'll be kind of interesting to see how things kind of pop up and come up over the next couple of weeks. But yeah, really excited about that. We did have I actually had some carrots that I've been kind of slowly harvesting as well too. So we finished those up and pulled those out as well too before they really start growing and get going for the season. And at that point in time, they just kind of go like into like their second season of growing, and we'll start throwing up their seed stock and all of that. And then from there, the carrots are just woody and don't taste good or anything. So I think I got them just in time before that was about to happen. So yeah, so a bunch of great harvesting and getting new seeds and everything planted out in our patio garden area, plus a lot of just cleaning up. Again, this is an alleyway garden, and every year I think about this as I'm kind of trying to weed up and clean up and everything, is how much we normally deal with weeds. Like I said, in the back patio area, I got tons of weeds that just pop up here and there, but they're just a little bit more manageable in those spaces. In the alleyway, it's just it can just get really overwhelming when it comes to the different weeds, the variety of weeds, and the things that are just growing and popping up everywhere. But I try to keep up with it, try to keep things kind of nice and presentable, as it's a really kind of a cool space for the public in a way, my neighbors, the people in the community who are walking around. In fact, I have like regular people who actually come through and walk this area specifically, like on their daily or weekly walks, when they're walking their dogs, doing that sort of thing, just so that they can walk through our garden area through the alleyway there too. So we try to keep it looking nice as we can, but the winter will wreak a lot of havoc, and especially when you have a warm winter, like I said, like we've had this last year here. So lots of things just growing. In fact, even some weeds I haven't even seen before. I was looking at a few things I'm like, I don't even know if I've ever seen this before. But lots of that stuff going on, getting things prepared, getting things ready. We still got, like I showed last week, we got all of our peppers have been all transplanted from our one light station that we have, the smaller, where we got like the more the seed cell trays into another area of the house where we've got like hanging lights, and we can really spread them out and get them under some really good, even brighter lights as well too. So those have been transplanted. Those are on their next stage, just getting prepared for the weather to warm up just a little bit more so we can get them out in the garden spaces, and hopefully I'll have them all prepared and ready to go by the time they're ready. Tomatoes, I got tomatoes started just a couple of weeks ago. And tomatoes are just so fast. So that's one of the reasons why I kind of start them just a little bit later than I do peppers. They're already ready to be potted up. I just started them maybe a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. They're ready to be potted up. I've got to get that done this week as well too, and pot those up, get those ready. They'll go kind of around where all the peppers are underneath of those lights for just about another week or so. I'll let them grow and grow just a little bit more, maybe get just a little bit taller. They're already about so tall now. I'll let them double in size. Should only take about a week or so, maybe another week and a half. And then I'm getting them right outdoors. Even though it's before my last frost date, right now we're already starting to warm up. I'm seeing some pretty warm overnight temperatures coming up. So I'm looking forward to that. So hopefully when we get about a week and a half from now, and I'm thinking about getting them outdoors, we'll kind of look at what the temperatures look like, and hopefully from that point I'll only be facing maybe a night or two of maybe some late frosts, or closer to my last frost date, and that way we can get maybe a couple of weeks head start. We've already been kind of getting some warmer temperatures overnight, like I said, so the soil temperatures are already starting to warm up as we're getting these warmer days out. So you saw the clip at the very beginning there. It's been nice and beautiful over the last few days. Lots of really good sun, been warming up, so that soil's warming up really well. So it should be ready to go, and hopefully with that head start, we can get ourselves some good tomato production this year, because it's always an issue when or at least over the last couple of seasons, as the weather starts to really warm up and get hot, it kind of flips like a switch almost, and we're dealing with 100-degree weather, and that's just going to happen right at the end of May, right at the beginning of June. And so I want to be prepared with nice big healthy plants already growing and hopefully already producing flowers and fruits by the time that happens, and then we'll see what kind of results we get from there. So all right, we'll be right back here in just a moment, and we'll get with our first guest of the day. Let's Get Growing is sponsored by IV Organic.
Hi, my name is Charles Malky, biologist and plant expert with IV Organics, where we grow cool plants and author Saving the World with the Home Garden. IV Organic 3-in-1 Plant Guard has 7 natural oils that protect your plants, not just from the summer heat as well as winter cold, but also protects your plants from damaging insects and rodents. The oils in the product include castor, cinnamon, clove, garlic, peppermint, rosemary, and spearmint. These oils are natural insect and rodent repellent oils, which are encapsulated by the base powder, offering your plants months of protection at a time. 1 application per year will suffice for protection against damaging summer sunburn and winter sun scald, but if the target is pests, application as much as 2 to 3 times a year may be necessary.
Sarah from Sarah's Seed Shop, and I'm here with this week's trivia question. What colors did carrots originally come in? A, purple and black, B, red and yellow, C, orange and yellow, or D, orange and purple? We'll be back with the answer a little bit later on in the show.
All right, all right, all right. If you know the answer to Sarah's trivia question there, definitely get into our comment section and let us know what you think the answer is there. And again, we'll have her back here in just a little bit with the answer. So let's see here. I want to jump into our comment section and start seeing who we got joining with us today. And of course, we've got Rochelle. She's in the chat there with everybody as we're about to talk with her in just a couple of minutes. And we've got Elizabeth joining with us. Hello, Elizabeth. Great to have you with us here on the show this weekend. We got Rob from Rob's Allotment Gardening over in the UK. Awesome to have you here with us, Rob. Big Will Dog, great to have you back again. Awesome, awesome. Joining us from Indianapolis. Awesome, Rob. Thank you so much. And of course, we've got YouTube's greatest moderator, Jay Dixon, joining with us here from Huron County in Ontario, Canada. Awesome, awesome. Jay, thank you so much for being in the comments there and joining in with all of the great links and everything throughout the show. So thank you so much. Thank you. And let's see here. Let's go through. Make sure I got everybody. Oh, Sam joining with us as well, too. Sam, awesome to see you again. Thank you. Thank you. All right. All right. Beverly joining with us here. Awesome, Beverly. Thank you. All right. We already got a good group with us today. Connie jumping in the chat there with everybody. Awesome to see you, Connie. How to garden as well too. Awesome. Great to have you here. All right. Looks like we got a great group with us here today. So thank you all so much for joining with us on our show today. So our first guest here, let's get with our first guest for our segment. Are you following me?
Are you following me? Are you following me, dude?
All right, all right. Let's welcome Rochelle from Brampton Gardener on the show with us today. How are you doing, Rochelle? Great to have you here.
It's weird being on this side of the chat for a change.
That's right. That's right. That's what I figured. I was like, we got to get you on the screen, get you out of the chat and on the screen. So how's everything going for you?
Good. Today is beautiful. It's 50 degrees and sunny. We've had snow on and off all week. It's been miserable and rainy and drizzly and disgusting. And so today, finally, it's sunny. I got plants hardening off outside. I work out in. I made bira for lunch. It was absolutely delicious. It's a good day. It's been a good day.
Awesome. Awesome. So just to let everybody know, you grow out of Canada though, right? So you're a little bit north.
A little bit.
So that's a good reason to really enjoy some great weather, right?
Yes, I am in Brampton, Ontario, just outside of Toronto. It's in the suburb of Toronto there. So zone 5B, supposedly.
Right,
so
right.
Yeah.
So things are starting to warm up for you.
Just starting, but yeah, our lows are still pretty cold. I think we're gonna this weekend though, so that's really exciting as well. My husband's gonna get the heater set up in there, and then I'm gonna be probably up potting. My dwarf tomatoes are getting huge, and I think I'm just gonna put them in their final container. I do them in a stacking vertical gardening system I have, and they're about 10 inches around, and I can stack. So I usually do 2 dwarf tomatoes and then basil on each side, and stack those up in the tower garden so I can get those going and get them out in the greenhouse and get them. I mean, they're fruiting already, right? So they need Right now they're just in a 2-inch soil block, so they need a lot more than that. And it'll be nice to get the basil out there room on my racks because I need to start my regular tomatoes and then things like zinnias, sunflowers, where it's almost go time. It's
Almost go time. Oh yeah. And again, too, for those of you who have the shorter growing season, it's even more exciting when things are ready to get growing, right?
It is. It makes a big difference. It's funny because I've lived all over, and when I lived in Florida for a few years, I didn't really care much about gardening at all because it's just so lush everywhere you go, right? And then I moved to Canada. It's like, hey, things are not as lush here, even in the summertime. And so I think that is why, especially when I first started gardening here, it'll be 20 years this year, and just kind of wanting to bring a bit of that tropical vibe to the backyard and into the landscaping here, focused on like color and a lot of like big tropical plants. So I already have started. These are all from seed. These are a bunch of cannas.
Yes, awesome.
So these are
From
some of them are like
even
dwarf cannas. I've got yellow, dark pink, light pink.
Wow.
Cannas that I harvested last year out of plantings I saw outside.
Wow.
I had permission.
Awesome.
I have permission. And then I have my giant King Humbert cannas as well that I dig up and store as tubers. So they're probably going to get potted up this weekend too and thrown out into the ground. I usually have a ton of just, I like big leaves and lots of vines.
So how do those do in that colder region then too? Is you get them outside, obviously.
Nothing that's cold that's goes out until the end of May. So the big May 2-4 weekend, as we call it here, Victoria Day weekend, usually falls around May 18th to the 24th, somewhere in that week range is the Queen Victoria's birthday here in Canada. And that is like kind of the big planting weekend, but give her a week weather forecast because we've had snow. We've had snow on Victoria Day and we've had it 100 degrees on Victoria Day. So it's just kind of our goal. My official last frost date is May 9th. But so then that means, usually you plant your tender plants out about 2 weeks after your last frost. So that puts me towards the end of May, give or take, depending on the forecast.
So will those grow back again next year though?
I will dig up the bulbs. And so I dig up the tubers actually. Every year I dig up all the tubers and I put them out on the deck and let them dry out a bit. And then I pack them away in a big yard bag in the basement in a cool, dark place. And then every year they start up again. So
right on.
Yeah, it's a lot cheaper.
That takes it to a whole nother level when you have to dig them up. I live in an region where I don't have to dig them up. And
right.
Just pop up and come up every year. And so that's
lucky duck. Yeah. So,
right. Yeah. But that's what you got to do if those are the type of things that you want to grow in that area though. Right. So if you're looking to kind of, you said make things a little more tropical and all of that. Another thing you like to focus on is flowers though too. I see that's one of the things you really.
Yeah, I do grow a lot of food, but my passion is definitely in the flowers and in the landscaping. I grew up, my dad was a builder. He was a contractor and he did a lot of his own landscaping for projects for whether he was doing houses or he went on to do some larger developments. And so for him sitting down and sketching out on his, drafting paper, the landscaping plans for around either the houses or in front of the entryways into the, whatever you want to call it. Housing areas, development areas, right? And so, and we went along to the job sites all the time, and I absolutely loved the days when it was going to the nurseries. And this was back before Home Depot and Lowe's or anything like that, right? So if you went, you needed wood, you went to the hardware store. You needed lights, you went to the lighting store, and you needed plants, you went to the local greenhouse. And so it's up in Woodburn, Oregon, called Al's greenhouse, and it was my happy place as a kid. Like, it was amazing. It was beautiful. It was huge, and they had all kinds of plants and trees. And my dad, of course, he was more into the landscaping mode. So it was more structural, more the shrubs, the trees, the bones. And at the house, it was definitely, he was obsessed with roses. He still loves roses. He had a bunch of tree roses. He had a bunch of roses out around the front. And then, mom would pop in with, a handful of geraniums and petunias and some hanging baskets. But it was more the, the shrubs and things like that. Not as much on the flowers growing up. But originally we're from Alaska. That's where my mom was born and raised. I was born in Fairbanks, and my dad was really into gardening up there, of all places.
Right. I lived in Alaska myself too.
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah, cool. Yeah. I went to high school in Alaska.
Well, where at, in Fairbanks or Anchorage?
Soldotna.
Soldotna. My uncle lived in Soldotna. He was a fisherman. He was a fisherman. My mom was from Juneau. So
yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Come from a fishing family myself too.
Oh yeah, my mom has stories of her and her sister getting stranded on an iceberg floating out in the
Yeah.
The stuff they did, it's crazy.
And I didn't think about it too much too when I was living up there, and at the time being a teenager, my grandmother did grow and garden in Alaska, and I didn't even think about it too much until later on when I really started thinking about growing and gardening myself and started thinking back. I was like, wow, she really did. She had a greenhouse, she grew tomatoes, all sorts of different things right there in Alaska. And again, it's just a shorter season. You definitely need the greenhouse to extend it just a little bit more and that sort of thing.
Have the 24-hour
you can do everything. What's that?
But they have, especially up in Fairbanks, you have that 24-hour daylight in the middle of summer.
Yeah.
And my dad still swears, he said broccoli and cauliflower, the best tasting veggies ever up there. And he says it's because of that 24-hour sunlight in the summers. And what he would do is in the spring, the ground was, well, in the fall, he would prep it. So he would kind of do like these long raised beds, not raised, like just mounded dirt. And then he would cover it with visqueen, black plastic. And then in the spring, the black plastic would heat that mounded soil up before the rest of the soil, right? Everything else was still frozen, and that would kind of get nice and warm. And then he would just go along and do little slits in the plastic and plant in his vegetable. That black really helped to heat up that soil in that area all summer long. And he swears by he had the best tasting vegetables ever up there.
Yeah.
And
even though it does can get kind of warm, I remember having some nice days during the summertime, but there's just a lot less risk of them, bolting because of heat and that sort of thing. So you can really grow, especially like brassicas and all that, probably just all right through the summertime into fall. So yeah, I can imagine they're probably really nice plants too, like you said, with all that light.
Yeah. Well, Fairbanks, it's quite a bit farther north. And so winter than like southeastern Alaska, but they also get a lot hotter in the summer. So they can get up to, I know last summer they were roasting up there. I still have family up there. My cousins and my uncle are still there. My parents are actually in Anchorage now. And so they have a much cooler, more temperate climate there in Anchorage. So it doesn't get as cold in the winter, but I think they barely hit like maybe average mid 70s last summer there. So not the best for growing.
Yeah. It's a big state. So there's a lot of varying between, like I said, from Fairbanks to Anchorage to even Kenai, so a lot where I was living, even a little bit further south and all of that too. So, but yeah, it was great. Again too, like it was, to me, I didn't think about it much until looking back in the memories, thinking about, helping her in the summertime. That was one of the ways I would do chores for her and favors and things, was cleaning out or doing things around the greenhouse and helping her maintain certain things and all that. Lots of weeding, all of that.
Shoveling the big pile of manure that would get dumped. I hated that day. I was not a fan of that
sort of stuff.
It's still steaming sometimes, I'd be like,
Yeah. I wish I would have. I look back though, and I wish I would have had more and done more and had more of a connection with her and that sort of and those sort of things, to have more memories of that sort of stuff. But I have a few, and to me, again, though, it just brings back that kind of idea that we think of Alaska as like a frozen tundra, and we don't necessarily understand that it does thaw out. And it does get some really nice, I've grown up in the Pacific Northwest, so to me that you get those, you know, pretty decent Pacific Northwest type of summers. You know, I remember, you know, summers at the lake in Alaska, you know, just like anywhere else and all of
And the
that too.
mosquitoes.
Oh, and the mosquitoes, the horror.
They're
Oh,
enormous. Or my
that
sister had
that's an
chicken pox.
experience. That's an
My sister had
experience.
my sister had chicken pox when she was little. My mom didn't know. She just thought it was mosquito bites because
Oh
the
my,
mosquitoes are always so bad. Yeah.
right.
Or
Yes.
she got a
And
fever. Something's not
yeah.
right.
Yeah, it's one of those strange experiences. My first summer up there and looking down the road or down the ways and seeing this black cloud that was moving. And I was like, what in the world is this? And it's literally a big black cloud of mosquitoes, and they move in these, and it's just the weirdest thing to see them. Yeah, and the mosquitoes are amazing. Yeah. But the cool thing though too is that you can they get used to your blood, or your blood gets used to the area. So like within like a season or two, you stop getting bitten as much as you
Well,
would
some
before.
people, and I've heard it depends on your blood type. It can depend on, how much blood
Mhm.
is, vitamin B, I've heard helps if you take vitamin B. I don't know. There's all kinds of stuff. I don't know.
Yeah.
All I know is
I
they
just
love me.
Yeah,
So,
I just remember my first summer. That's how I showed up spring, my first summer right away, and those mosquitoes just fed on me. Like I was just, yeah, I
yeah.
looked like I had the chicken pox, like you said. It was everywhere. They fed on me. But by the next summer and the summer after that, it was so much less. I was, they were hardly bothering me. And, we'd have, and again, it's a tourist area. So those mosquitoes are getting tons and tons of fresh meat every summer. So I'm sure that's what they're doing. They're going after new blood.
Yeah. Well, and I think
But
a lot of the old Alaskans, there's just too much alcohol in their blood. Maybe that
yeah, there you go. That could be
a
it
little too much
too.
whiskey.
That's right.
The old prospectors. Yeah.
That's right. That's right. So, what do you? Let's get right into it here. So, usually, what I like to talk about here on the show is to dig into everybody's garden stories, and I wanted to kind of where does your gardening experience begin? Everybody's has a little different story to tell. So, how did you get
Well, I
started
grew up
growing?
helping my parents doing everything, like on the job site. We were working. By the time I was 12, I was driving the backhoe. We just always did everything as a family. So, weeding, chores like that. When I was born in Alaska, but then when I started grade school, we moved to Oregon. So I grew up in Salem. So it's a zone, 8B. It's a very temperate zone.
This
Willamette
is
Valley is one of the
great.
most fertile valleys in the world, grassy capital of the world at the time. And so it was an amazing, place to grow. And so my dad, piece of property kind of out in the country. We had a little creek that ran through it. He had an orchard out in the back. He would grow corn and lots of veggies. And interestingly, he built the house, and I was 2 at the time, and we lived half the year in Salem, and then we spent this because he was still building with my grandfather up there in the summer. So we were 6 months both places until I was around 7. And they were installing the garden, and my mom they decided to have a big party. Everyone came over and helped kind of get the garden set up, get everything planted, get stuff going, whatever. And it happened when St. Helens erupted.
Oh yeah,
And
I remember that.
my family are not the kind that would be like, maybe we should reschedule. Nope. Nope. My dad just handed out painter's masks to everybody, and they went ahead. And so there's like ashes falling everywhere. It was probably actually really good for the garden. But
Right.
yeah, they went ahead and did that. And so I was 2 and I was traumatized. And I think that has been why I've always hated like any kind of like dystopian futuristic movies or anything from a small age, was
Right.
because I was just freaked out. Like it's
Yeah.
it's basically snowing ash and everyone's
Mhm.
wearing masks, and it's like, what? It's very apocalyptic.
Yeah, it was.
It was a very bizarre day to,
Yeah.
to to continue on doing that, but everyone was there to help, and they, dad had the tractors and stuff there to help dig whatever. And so I wasn't very helpful at that time, but I do remember, helping. We'd get the big loads every spring, come in and having to help shovel that around, and harvesting and eating corn fresh off the cob out in the
Mhm.
field. We was, warm and hot from the summer. It was absolutely, absolutely delicious. So I grew up, around gardening. My mom's sister at the time, who lived not too far, full on homesteaders. Like at the time, no one called it that, but they had chickens that they kept. They had geese that were vicious. They had orchard and they had a full garden, and she did all kinds of canning. So they had this amazing cold room that was just full of all her canned fruits and veggies. And she did pickles and that. And unfortunately they moved, when I was probably around 10. And so I didn't really get to, experience like the actual process of it. Had they stayed around, they moved up to Alaska, at the time. And so I regret that as an older, or that they weren't there longer, because I could really have learned, so much from her, doing all of that. But it was just kind of part of, we just always gardened. And then, in early, November of 2000, I moved with my parents to Florida, and we were in a condo, didn't do much gardening down there. A few plants. I had a coffee plant, and I had a few herbs, and I had a little lemon tree. And they all died when I went on vacation and my parents didn't water it. And then I met my husband, and I got married, moved up here to Canada. And, it was my first backyard, my first house. It's a townhouse. Narrow. He had already done some landscaping. He had already put in the arbor. He had put in, a few of the shrubs and some of the trees. He had done, again, the bones of the garden he had started with. And so the first year I just kind of went and got a flat of petunias and some dianthus, put them around around the tree in the front.
Yeah.
And then the next year we did a little bit more. And then I think it was so we got married in 2004. And so then, 2006 was when we really cut out some bigger, sections of the garden. And at the time it was just kind of the hill. And so cut the curves going around, down the sides. And it was in the spring. And so by the time we spent all the money on all the compost, which fortunately at the time you could get through the city, at the dump, you could go in and it was $35 a ton. So that was a great place to go and get compost. And we did that. And we're like, okay, this is any more shrubs or perennials, right? Spring is a bad time. We're going to wait till they go on sale at the end of the season. But then we have all this like open space, and it was so sad looking. And it was around Father's Day, and we went to the local, garden center, and they were clearing out their petunias. And so we went, and I bought 6 flats of petunias just to fill the space.
Oh, yes.
And it was amazing. I did it in color blocking, and we just sat on at the time it was just little patio stones. We hadn't even done our deck or anything yet. And I was just like, oh yeah. Like I will never not have just a ton of flowers and a ton of color in the backyard, because it just brought to life. And it was like, this is it. We have to do flowers. And then of course the cost of flowers is, it's getting more and more expensive. And then we'd been wanting to expand the garden even more, and we just never had time. We work in construction, and April, May, June was all busiest time for us for work. We just never had a chance. And so then when 2020 came, we were completely locked down for 3 months. And we couldn't go anywhere. We couldn't work. We couldn't do anything. So we were like, you know what? Let's expand the back garden. So we went and got the hoses out, and we laid out what we wanted, and we marked it. And then the problem was we didn't have anywhere to buy any plants to put in it, because everything was shut down. So even like here, Home Depot and Lowe's were all order pickup only. And they had not ordered in anything for spring. They didn't have any soil. They didn't have any plants. They had nothing like that, because of the time of the year it was. So the only place I could get soil was from Costco, which thank goodness they have the big, Pro Mix bales. And the only place I could get plants, were seeds from like the dollar store. And so that was kind of what we did that first year. And I had never started my own bedding plants from seed.
Yeah.
I would do my tomatoes, peppers, whatever herbs. I would go online and order a few specialty varieties of zinnias or sunflowers. And I would start a handful of seeds. I didn't really have anywhere to do it, just in my bedroom window. Right.
Right.
And so then all of a sudden it's like, I need hundreds of plants, and I'm going to grow all by seed. Because if I don't fill it in with plants and flowers, it's going to fill in with weeds. Right.
Yep.
And nature does not like to be naked. So it will fill itself in. And all of a sudden that year we had hundreds of flowers. So we had zinnias, we had the Sweet Williams, we had the dianthus, we had just a variety, you know, whatever you get at the dollar store. But it looked amazing. And I was like, oh, I can grow all my own stuff, right? So now instead of going and buying a flat of petunias, I can, you know, I can start a tray of petunias.
Yeah.
So
it's just amazing, right?
I'm using the soil blocks, right? So they are 3/4 inch soil blocks. So right here, this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 rows of 8.
Those are some great starts for such small blocks too.
So these need to get potted up.
Yeah.
I've got petunias. I've got coleus. On the end here, this is a burgundy petunia, and then I have these are the lime petunias.
Wow.
And oh my goodness, I've got no, these ones here. Oh no, these are jewels of opar. These are really pretty seedlings.
So awesome. It's such a great realization when you finally figure out that, you know, all of these sort of things you can grow yourself, you know.
And then these are more petunias, different varieties, and then I have some lobelia here. So so then I decided, okay, I got to grow more seeds, but I don't have a townhouse and I just have the one window. And then I discovered soil blocking. Yeah. And now in the space of what used to take, 48 cells, I can do 280. And that just revolutionized growing and gardening for me. Wow. So I do grow a lot. I was in Shed Wars last year. I grow a lot of tomatoes. I grow peppers. I grow lots of different herbs, eggplants. This year I'm doing cardoon. I grow a lot of different greens. I do like to, grow food. And I know that in the gardening community, especially on YouTube and in a lot of the Facebook groups, there's really a focus. And a lot of people, to them, they only grow flowers, to help with bugs, or, they'll throw in some marigolds or some nasturtiums. Whereas my focus is more the appeal. And it's funny that you have Linda Vater on today, because I think of her as more of an aesthetic gardener. As her gardening style, she's all about the style and the beauty of the garden and the landscaping and all of that, which is definitely where my passion is in the gardening. I do love growing food and I love eating, but it's about how it looks. So I do like to incorporate my herbs, and I put peppers into my garden.
See, I do think a little bit about who I'm pairing together too, a little bit.
Oh yeah. I just thought that was funny. I was like, hey, she does, and she likes to do thrifting. I love to do thrifting and stuff like that too. So it's kind of funny, but so that's kind of the more, and I will credit some of my obsession with being a little kid and going to Butchart Gardens. We went several times as a kid. And if you haven't been to Butchart Gardens, it is the most amazing, magical place in the world. It's in Victoria, BC, and it is just this incredible gardens. And the impact, I think, like, to me, that's what a garden's supposed to look like. That's just that abundance of flowers and color and texture. And then as a kid, living in Alaska for holidays, you go to Hawaii, and Hawaii is lush and tropical, vibrant colors.
Victoria, though, it's great you mentioned that. Is a really beautiful place. It's one of the only places in Canada I've actually been, besides Vancouver a couple of times, but being from the Pacific Northwest. But that's where we went, my wife and I, on our honeymoon, was to Victoria, and did Butchart Gardens and stayed in a castle hotel they had there, which was really awesome. And just just a really beautiful place. It was awesome.
Well, don't they have like isn't it Craig Derrick Castles there?
It's something like it's a long time ago for me to actually try to pull out the memory, but
you haven't gone. Darth X says 2 hours from you have to go. You have to go. And last time I went was in, I think, 06, 07, 08, somewhere in there, before I got pregnant with my daughter. And I had never been a really big fan of begonias going in. Like, to me, begonias, geraniums, that's kind of, my mom had always done them. To me, it kind of was like old lady flowers. I wasn't a huge fan. But we went to Butchart Gardens, and they had this like indoor atrium area. You can't go in it, but it's got like this little waterfall in the middle, and it was, oh my God. It was
Yes.
so full of begonias. And then they had these enormous begonia baskets hanging in the shade, and fell in love with begonias and the vibrant color of the shade plants. Because my garden, as it's growing, because my husband, like, he bought new. And so over the years, the trees are getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And so my yard, which used to be full sun, I'm now getting a lot of more shade areas. You know, a lot of the tropical plants that I love really like full sun. And so I've had to kind of move into more of the shade loving plants, but I don't want just texture, right? I don't want just hostas in the shade. I want color. And I want that lush tropical color. And a lot of actual tropical plants, think house plants and like full sun, because they're used to being at the bottom of the rainforest, right? So they're getting dappled sunlight. And so that's kind of where I've kind of tried to veer into for the front yard, especially to try and get more tropicals. I use my amaryllis from Christmas, and I put them in my front planter summer long.
Yeah. So many awesome possibilities. That's the great thing about gardening. Real quick here, last question for you real quick. I do want to mention and talk about the fact that you've got your own little YouTube channel, Brampton Gardener. So tell us a little bit about your channel real quick here, and what everybody can catch and see on your channel.
Yeah, sure.
Down below,
So
also, I want to mention everybody, there are links down in the description below as well too.
I had been a big fan of watching gardening shows on TV, and then switched to watching them on YouTube. And then especially during the lockdown, there was nothing else to do, sit with my cup of coffee and watch all YouTube channels on TV. And everyone that I was watching at the time, they were all like the big channels, and they all had these huge yards, and they would do these like hour and a half long garden tours. And I was just sitting there laughing, thinking, oh, I could do a garden tour, and it would be like, there's the garden. And then I was like, oh, well, maybe there's someone out there. Like, not everyone has these big yards. Maybe I can show how in a very small space, I can grow a ton of plants, right? I think like last year, so I'm in a townhouse. My yard is like 15, 17 feet wide, and I think maybe 70 feet long. And it's a little bit, and then it's a big hill in the back. So there's no flat space. It's very awkward. I grow in a lot of containers. I do a lot of vertical gardening, and I had I think 30 tomato plants and 25 pepper plants alone. The year before, I grew over 200 petunias.
What?
The seeds to germinate. Okay. The year before, I had started a bunch of tomato plants, and I ended up having to give a bunch of them away. I walked down the street with a wagon full of tomato plants on Victoria Day weekend, getting rid of them, because I was like, here, anyone I saw outside, I was like, you want a tomato plant? Because I had too many. So I started the channel just to kind of encourage people that, just because you're in a cold climate, you're in a short season, you don't have a lot of space, you can still grow a lot of food and a lot of really beautiful things. So to me, like, we haven't even wanted to go camping or, doing a lot of things like that, because we love just sit on the deck, and it's beautiful. We've created this, oasis in the backyard. And one of my favorite things to do, especially when everything's planted and it's blooming and it smells amazing, is to go out and do yoga in the evenings, with, of course, Dexter attacking me. But I mean, that's the, the base, starting seeds, saving my own seeds, growing my own. I do some cooking. I don't know if you can see the sewing machine behind me. I do focus on a bit of sewing that I do as well. I do flower arranging, and then sometimes I'll, kind of take people out on a sightseeing tour of the area here. It is absolutely that we live in, and I've done videos where I've toured some of the local greenhouses, and where I've turned, some of the local parks and things like that. So my daughter really wants me to start a series of restaurant tours. Oh. She wants to go out to eat. We live in a very culturally diverse neighborhood, so it'd be kind of fun to incorporate baby.
Yeah.
So
and every now and then a live stream, which I jump on
here
recently. So
I was doing live streams very regularly, and then last year I went to visit my parents, so I was gone for I missed like 3 weeks, and then I got back and I wasn't feeling good, and then I got sick and I lost my voice for weeks, and then I lost my slot. I got out of the habit. And honestly, I've just kind of enjoyed not being on that schedule. You know, I have a teenage daughter. We do a lot of art projects and stuff with the library and things in the evening. So it's been kind of nice not having that schedule anymore. I kind of just do pop-ups whenever I can.
Whenever, that's fine. I'll pop in every now and then too.
Thank you.
But anyways, I really want to thank you for taking your time today and joining with us on the show.
Thanks
Again, it's
for
really
having me.
great to have you on this side. You know,
Yeah.
usually in the chat.
I apologize for everyone I ignored in the chat. It's hard to.
It is. That's the challenge, right?
To chat and
To do
watch
both.
and all that. Yeah.
Right on,
Thanks,
right
Jay.
on, Rochelle. So everybody go check out Rochelle's channel there,
Thank
Brampton
you.
Gardener. There's a link down in the description. And thanks again, Rochelle. We'll see you a little bit later.
Bye.
Hey gardeners, thanks for tuning in to our show today. We'll be right back at it here in just a moment. I just wanted to take a second here to highlight our regular videos and features here on the Urban Gardener channel. Our weekly garden journals, and our incredible featured visits.
The answer to this week's trivia question is A. Carrots come from the Middle East, where they were originally cultivated from wild plants that had long black and purple taproots. These early carrots were extremely popular, and they quickly spread throughout much of the known world at the time. Today there are many varieties of carrots, and they come in a whole range of colors, the most popular being, of course, orange. Are you ready to grow some of your own carrots? Head over to Sarah's Seed Shop, where you can find garden seeds at unbeatable prices. Thanks, and have a great day.
All right. Moving right along here on the show today. Thank you so much to Rochelle for joining with us. And again, check out links down below to all of our guests to find their channels or their websites, all of that too. So definitely go and check those all out. And again, thank you all so much for jumping in and joining the conversation there. It's time for us to get moving right on along to our featured guests for the day.
You never know when you might learn something, and that's what this is about for me. These are people that I admire. Please welcome my next guest.
All right, everybody. Today we have with us, I'm really excited, Linda Vater. Let's get Linda in on the show here. Linda, there you are.
Well, hello.
Awesome to have you here with us today. Thank you for joining the show.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here. I'm sorry I'm not out in my garden talking to you, but it is just beyond windy today.
Oh, you got a windy day, huh?
Well, we are Oklahoma, you know.
That's right. You're in Oklahoma, right? So yeah. So Oklahoma, what's the weather like there this time of spring besides it being windy today?
Well, I've often said in Oklahoma, we kind of, if you can garden here, you can garden anywhere.
Okay.
Because it's kind of like the land of Job. We have such extremes. For example, last year we had a low of -18 and a high of 115. So,
Oh, wow.
yeah, so our extremes are just really, they're just really all over the place. So, but right now we are, let's just put it this way, the tulips are just about finished. The daffodils are long gone. And now we're waiting for the other stuff to come into play. April 15th is our last frost date. And
Oh, okay.
yeah, so it was a very, very early spring. And I always like to say I like spring to unfold, not explode, but typically here it always explodes and very quickly.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of nice. You got a nice early last frost date there, so you get
Yes, it's
yeah,
good.
yeah. Mine's still about a month ahead of you
Oh
ahead of
wow.
yours, but
Yeah, yeah.
but again too, we got those real. I mean, I've got a really good like every season type of area where I mean we really get to enjoy each season and get a little bit of everything. Although I do have to admit we did have a really warm winter though.
Did you really?
Yeah.
We had a warm winter other than when it fell off the cliff. And that's the problem here. We'll have a pretty moderate winter and then all of a sudden it just gets beyond cold. And that's where we lose a lot of things and why the spectrum of plants we can grow isn't as broad as it
Yeah.
would be otherwise.
Yeah, it's very similar situation. I would say this last year and this year as well too for us in this area.
Yeah.
It's like you said, it's a moderate type wind. I'll tell you, most of my spring flowers, I had crocuses popping up and coming up out of my garden area. What was it on the third day of the year?
Oh wow.
January 3rd. January 3rd.
Yeah.
That's how warm it was. We had like 70-degree days in January.
Yeah.
And so that really confuses everything. And once the things start thinking it's spring, they start popping up, they start coming out. And then lo and behold, no, winter's still not done with you yet, or hasn't even really shown up as you're talking about, as we start seeing some of these late frosts and late freezes and those sort of things that really start to wreak havoc on everything.
Yeah, you just have to expect weather whiplash. And recently I came out with a 5-year garden journal that came out in November through Cool Springs Press. And it's those kinds of things that I think are so important to document, the vagaries of the weather and how quickly things can change. I think here in Oklahoma, there was like a 70-degree temperature change in 24 hours.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so you just never know, and obviously that's very hard for the garden to adapt to, but it's very hard for the gardener to adapt to as well. One minute you're out there in shirt sleeves, and the next minute you're all bundled up in
Yeah.
a coat and a hat. So
That's right. That's right. And then just really trying to think of the challenging adjustments you're trying to make, in order to tackle each of the different issues, because it just varies and it's so different. So, sometimes, it's just, you kind of got to roll with the punches as they come, right?
well, I often say that here in Oklahoma, it really helps us channel our inner pioneer spirit.
Right.
We're a frontier people after all, out here on the plains.
Right.
And gardening ain't for sissies here in Oklahoma. So
Yes.
if you do it, you just have to have, I often say you just need a good sense of humor and a strong dose of ibuprofen.
Oh, yeah.
And that will keep you charging forward.
That's right. That's right. I definitely need a little bit more of that ibuprofen each and every
Don't
year.
we all? Don't we all?
Each and every year. Right on, Linda. Well, thank you again so much for joining with us here. One of the things that we do with each of our guests is try to dig into their garden stories. How did gardening become a something that was just important to you? How did that start? Was this something that happened early on in childhood, or is this something that came to you a little bit later on in life?
Well, I think there's always a seed of your interest that germinates at a very young age, and there was for me. But I think that I've often said that houseplants were my gateway drug into full-blown gardening. And I was very much of the era of the 70s fern bar and that era. And it just is so comforting to me now to see so many young people, apartment dwellers and such, and they're just so interested in houseplants, because I think that is a great entree into the world of gardening, and the absolute delight and passion and all of the benefits that it comes from nurturing something green and growing, whether it's in a pot in your windowsill or it's something in the garden. But I also found that at varying different intervals in my life, when I was going through hard times, going all the way back to when I was very young, 5 or 6, I lost my mom at a very young age. And I can remember finding comfort in the germination of a surprise pumpkin seed, a jack-o'-lantern that had rotted and gone bad. And then all of a sudden a seed germinated, and I would watch it grow. And it became fascinating to me. And it kept me company, and it gave me something to look forward to every day. And I think on a large and a small scale, that's what gardening does for me. It gives me, it's my ikigai. It's one of my reasons to get up in the morning.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You touched on so many things that I find really important about, the passion of growing and gardening and all that. For me, my seed was planted with houseplants. This was basically what my mother's living room looked like when I was 5, 6 years old, and just getting in her way when she's trying to, pot up plants or doing things, and just getting into things. And so, it was easy for her to set me aside and go, hey, well, why don't you do this? And then from there started helping out and started propagating my own plants, at a very young age and all of that. And so that was where my seed was started. And for me and my channel and all that, again, too, and we kind of touched on this in our last interview, is that a lot of my focus is growing food outdoors in unused small gardening spaces and things like that as well. So we do a lot of different kind of unique things, and my passion for growing and gardening food kind of stemmed from that later on in my life. Whereas that seed was planted when I was younger with houseplants, and then later on in life it came to growing and gardening, and a lot of other things outdoors as well too, but mostly the food. But that's where you touched on what I think is probably the biggest part of what drew me in and kept me going, was that it was a place, it was kind of like a sanctuary. It was kind of a place where I could go to and kind of be relieved of some of these, stressful and tough things. You mentioned the loss of your mother at a young age. One of the things that really put me into the garden was the loss of my daughter's mother. So she had to deal with that, and I, as the the only parent, and those sort of things. So those were some really tough times that I found really just, that's where really the connection and gardening really started to pull me in. Like, this is something I know I'm going to do, because when I get out there and like you said, you start seeing plants come up from seed, and you're growing things, and you're nurturing this other life, as and all of this sort of stuff, and you start seeing the beauty and the connection with the world and all that sort of stuff. It just changes everything, and you're hooked. Once it gets to that point, you start seeing that sort of connection with nature and what it does for you personally. It's just, there's no turning back.
Yeah, it's very redemptive. It's very comforting. It's very optimistic. Just a few minutes ago, I went out to get my mail, and because of the nature of what I do and the public nature of my garden, I have tons of people who drive by all of the time, and who stop and visit, and they come from all over the country. And I went out to get the mail, and there was a woman who was up here from Dallas, and she had her family with her, and they wanted to drive by the cottage and say hello and meet me and get their picture taken. And it was lovely. But she said something that was very meaningful to me, and she thanked me and people like you who provide this kind of information on their YouTube channels, because she said, you guys have no idea what you do for our mental health, for those of us that are lonely, or those of us who are just feeling down, and we need something literally green and growing and smiling with optimism for the future to kind of just help us pull us out of the doldrums. And I think that was so true, and why so many people found gardening during COVID and
Mhm.
during other hard times, because you go outside and you start pulling weeds, or you start, planting some veggies or something, and you get a little hit of dopamine when you see that
Yeah.
germinate, and before you know it, you're in the flow and you have forgotten what ails you. And
Mhm.
I think that's just so comforting, and it is just such a benefit to gardening that is, I think, very, very much in the public domain now. People now know what it can do for us besides just the
Yeah.
cultivation and the horticultural aspects.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's definitely studies and things that people have done. You know, hospice care. A lot of these sort of places will put in and integrate gardens in places that they can have where, people can, it just helps relieve some of the stress of those sort of things going on in life. Prisons,
Yeah.
they have gardens for people to help them escape and find
Yes.
a way to heal from their sort of situations as well too. So there are things where they're actually utilized specifically
Yeah.
to tackle those sort of issues with people.
Yeah. And healing and creativity, I think, go hand in hand.
Mhm.
And gardening is such a creative enterprise, no matter how you do it. And there are as many different ways to garden as there are different gardener personalities. I just love listening to Rochelle, and the way that she does it. And I think it just helps us tap into our own inner artists, because we're all artists in our own way, and my medium happens to be in the garden, and you can play with color, and you can play with textures and forms, and it's very experiential, it's very sensual, and I just love that. It's so multidimensional that if you can't enter gardening through one avenue, through one portal, you can definitely enter it through another.
Yeah, yeah. And you also touched on another thing too I really like is, just a little bit before too, I wanted to mention was young people getting involved. That's one of the things I think was kind of, I don't, if there was any benefit, I think, of COVID and all of that for us in the gardening community was the exposure, and that it got out there and more people got to see it, and especially younger folks who are now, taking that on. I see so many more younger people making and putting more gardening content out there and all of that. And it's
Yeah.
just something I'm completely thrilled by.
Yeah, and a lot of them are coming to it from the edible perspective, kind of the farm to table
Yeah.
movement and everything. And then I wrote a book called The Elegant and Edible Garden, because to me, um, these kind of gardens are, I call them edimentals. They're not only practical and functional and utilitarian, they literally feed our bodies and our souls, but they also just feed our spirits, because I find vegetables, I find plants in general just inherently beautiful. And it's not just limited to those things that we categorize as ornamentals in our garden, but the fusion between things that are edible and that are ornamental, and both can be true simultaneously.
Yes, yes, those are what some of my favorite plants are, the ornamentals. One of my favorites was given to me some seeds a few years back by one of the followers of my channel is some pepper seeds. They're called Chinese five-color peppers.
Ooh, beautiful.
And I love peppers, and I was just talking about that we had a great pepper weekend last week on the show and all of that. But this is one of my favorite plants because it's like this little Christmas tree in the garden in a way. Because once all those five colors of these little peppers that grow in an upright, so they look like little Christmas light bulbs all throughout the plant in these five different colors. And so here's an edible that's just more of an ornamental, and that's kind of how and why I grow it, is because it just kind of brings this color and this life to the garden space.
Well, I think it gardening awakens the inner kindergartner in all of us.
Yes.
It just gives us a kind of capacity for delight that is very rare in our daily rounds. and you can go out and see something, and it's new to you, and you are, hi Beverly, I see you out there. That it opens our eyes in a way that we're so jaded now, as adults. We've seen a lot, and to see something and experience something with the wonder of a child, that
Yes.
is very much inherent to gardening. And it delights me every day. It's one of the reasons I moved and started a new garden, because I wanted to be in an area where there were lots of children. And it was so dear. I was walking into my backyard a couple of days ago, and this young, sweet girl, she must have been maybe 5 or 6, she came up behind me, and the kids in the neighborhood call me Miss Linda, and she said, Miss Linda, would you like some ladybugs? I said, well, sure, I'd like some ladybugs. I said, I see you have some there. And she said, yes. And she said, where would you like them? And I said, oh, well, why don't you just sprinkle them, amongst the tulips? And so she went out with her canister of ladybugs that she got from a local nursery, and she was just sprinkling them in the tulips. And then, without saying another word, she just turned in her sweet little dress and she said, thank you. And I said, no, thank you. And she was just gone. And it was like a little garden fairy that
Yes.
just appeared, and the flowers drew her to my garden. And it was such a magical moment.
Oh man.
And those kind of magical moments, if you look for them, are here for the taking. And the garden creates them. The garden, it makes them happen. And it just really is a source of childish delight.
It really truly is. And that's why I love these conversations so much, is that we get to really explore that and think about those things in that way and hear these sort of stories. I think that is just completely magical, that experience there. And also too, in the fact that, again, similar to what I've got here in my spaces, again, like I said, we're growing along these alleyways. My gardens are really kind of public facing, which is very similar with yours. I mean, you've got this amazing space. I'm telling you, though, it's just unbelievably amazing. I mean, I'm growing food, and ours is all this sort of stuff, and you can tell it's really kind of rustic and containers and all that stuff. And I look at your garden, I'm just like, oh, this is literally like what Rochelle was talking about earlier, a space that you can go into and just kind of just lose yourself and kind of meditate or yoga or just enjoy the beauty, but right out front for the public to see, though.
Yeah. But there's no one form of beauty. I mean, there is the rustic beauty of just creating the things that you create, sometimes with found items, with things that were given you. There's a story behind them. And it just because of the fact that yours is in a public space, that brings joy, that brings happiness. And during the tulip season, I mean, there's a constant stream of traffic in front of my house, and people are always very gracious, and they say, oh, it's just beautiful, it's just gorgeous, may I take a picture? We're not stalking, we just want to see the garden. But yesterday this just gave me the absolute just most delight. There was a young person who drove by, and she just stopped, and she didn't say anything. She didn't say, oh, this is beautiful, oh, this is wonderful. Oh, she just said, thank you. Just thank you.
Yes.
I know this is a lot of work, and just thank you. Well done. And I thought that is why we do what we do, is for that gift that it gives us, the gift that it gives to our community, the relationships it creates with our neighborhood and our community at large. And in this very contentious time right now in our country, where everybody is defined one way or another, we can all come together over our love of a beautiful garden, or over whatever it is that's eating our tomatoes. And it's a very communal unifying kind of.
Yeah. I'm really glad you mentioned that too, though, because that's something I've actually had some recent conversations with some folks about is that sort of thing that we're actually looking for. This climate's going to even get more and more as we move towards the end of the year and all of that. And one of the things that I've always kind of emphasized, even going to previous times, and having these discussions, that I've always found, and I use the term common ground.
Yes.
That
Yeah.
a garden is our common ground. It is a place where all of us find and can be drawn to in order to connect with each other, and it's again through nature and through humanity.
Yes.
And what we're doing is, we utilize this space because there's an interest for all of us in there, whether again it's the beauty of flowers, or it's growing food, or it's just the space itself.
You're so wise. You're so wise. And that expression common ground just encapsulates it all.
Yeah. Spread it out. Use it.
Yes. Yeah, spread it out.
Let's make sure that people understand that, this, and it's one of the things I love, again, too. You see at the top there, we're building community through gardening. And that's one of the best communities that I've found out there is the gardening community, and just really genuine people of all sorts of backgrounds.
Oh, yeah.
And our love for gardening is a good way to connect with our, that humanity and what our true connections are.
Yes.
Really.
And thank you for your service in doing what you do to spread the word and be kind of a gardening evangelist about what gardening can do for us individually and collectively. Because it is so, I used to think it was kind of, when I first got into gardening, when I started raising a family, and we moved into an old home, and we started renovating the home, and we started doing those kind of things. And I've often said that I raised my children as I raised my family, and bring them up in the way they shall grow. And I learned just so much along the way, but I was part of that kind of the Martha Stewart generation, that you enter it because you want to create beauty and you want to create this magazine worthy home and garden. But the longer I gardened, the more I realized that was just incidental. The more important thing was what a gift it is to the people that surround you, and how it draws people together, whether it's through a garden tour, or, you probably have done the same thing where you invite people over and it may be a fundraiser for something, or you may be part of an auction to raise money for something else. And then you realize what benefits it has to those who are lonely out there, or who are new gardeners. They want to learn. And it is just such a wonderful way to share our respective lives and our common humanity.
Yeah. And it was, and again, the escape and the connection, and this passion that I built and developed through my garden spaces over several years. And again, them being front public spaces, again, it's these connections. And I talked about this a little bit earlier in the show too, is that I have folks who literally make it a part of their walk during the day. You know what I mean? They're walking their dogs, when they're doing things, they walk through my alleyway. Most people don't make an alleyway their destination or a part of their walk, you know what I mean? But they take a diversion to come through my alleyway and do that. And it was through some of the,
and I might interject that not only do they walk through your alleyway, but they are probably more likely to take that walk in the first place, because when they do so, they have certain things to look forward to in their walking rounds. And so it's very exponential, what you're providing. It is just such a wonderful thing. And then they can look at the progress of whatever it is you have planted out there, and it becomes a teaching moment, and it's just one gift on top of another gift.
Yeah. And I love it's even better during the time of year for me, I guess, again, because I grow mostly food and all of that, is that when things are starting to ripen up
Yes.
and things are starting to like pop and go, be ready to pull off plants and all that. I love it when people come through then too, because I'm like, oh, here, boom, pull something off. Here, try
Yes, of
this, have
course.
this,
Yes.
and do that. And people just love that. And
Yeah.
again, too, it creates that connection again for me locally with my local community and everything. But then that sort of thing too moved my, I like, if people told me years ago that I'd be hosting my own little weekend gardening show on YouTube, I would have told you you're crazy. That's
Well,
that, I mean, come
first we would ask,
on.
what is YouTube?
Right?
That's the first question we would ask. But you're right.
Right. Yeah, and then it was from there. It was from those folks who would come through and they would be like, "Hey, you should share this with other people. What you've got going on here is really cool, We've got these, containers growing up on this carport rooftop. We've got corn and eggplants and tomatoes and peppers and you name it. We got all this stuff growing in all these different spaces all around this alleyway and everything. People are like, you need to share this. You should do something with that." And that's when those seeds of like, okay, well, what can I do,
Yeah.
and explore again, what for me more so than the shaping of the garden, the creative part became
Yeah.
making videos and putting things together in order to share my spaces with people online. And then that's where all of that was born out of, was
Yeah.
just
And you
was
got
just
outside your comfort zone. You
yes.
really, it made you test yourself to try new things. And I remember I have done a local TV spot here for more years than I want to share. And I remember the first time that I was asked to be on TV, and I thought, oh my goodness, I'll make a fool out of myself. And I really had to get outside of my comfort zone. And that's
Mhm.
another reason to engage in gardening, because, I often say there are so many garden risks worth taking. Don't be intimidated to try planting something when that packet of seed costs you 99 cents or $5. That's a gardening risk worth taking, to
Mhm.
try it and see what can happen. And you may be victorious, you may fail, but there's knowledge in the trying, there's value in the trying. You build character. And I sometimes say in Oklahoma, I've got enough character. I don't fail anymore. But it can be a catapult into so many different things.
Yeah, definitely. I like to say, you want to talk about getting out of your comfort zone. You definitely check out some of my first videos. You'll see a guy who was out of his out of his comfort zone for sure.
Well, I think we all were.
But it was fun, and it was this whole new way of taking things. For me, I had a photography and kind of video background from college and all that. So kind of, taking away, years from, having that connection with that stuff and coming back to it because of YouTube and because it's so easily acceptable or accessible for regular folks to be able to create and to do some of these sort of things.
Well, and the nice thing is you use a whole skill set, a whole set of skills that you've amassed over a long period of time, a lifetime. And I think that's a wonderful thing. I have to ask you, what are your very favorite vegetables to grow?
Ooh, turning the interview around on me, Linda. I love it. I love it. Thank you.
Myself.
Some of my very favorite things to grow. Okay, well, we just did this real, and I'm really passionate about. Last weekend was our hot pepper weekend, and had a couple of really great guests from the pepper community and all that. And really, my favorite thing would be, cucumbers, tomatoes. Those were some of my very first things. But when I started growing peppers, that's when literally I knew I was in it. I just, the variety, the colors, the shapes, the tastes, sweet to hot, ultra sweet to ultra hot, it's just the characteristics of the plants, the temperaments, of how they grow, and they're so different from each other, from one variety to the next, There's a lot of things I can expect, like my tomatoes. I can see them right here, and I can tell, and I can expect certain things from how they grow, what they do when you start them. It's a little bit different when you're dealing with peppers.
Yeah.
Peppers have their own personalities.
Nice. Well, we love them here because they're easy to grow and they like the
Yes.
heat. And
Yes.
and they're, you know, they're inherently beautiful. Now I saw, this is something you might want to try. I saw it and I just thought, what a brilliant idea. Are you familiar with Klaus Dalby? He's a Danish gardener. And he's got just an incredible garden including growing so many different kinds of edibles in containers.
Yeah.
But he had something that was similar to, you know, in Europe, they used to have these theaters of plants, which are basically displays of plants, plant stands that are all one plant, and they would have like all geraniums, all auriculas, all different kinds of things. And he had this one plant stand that was nothing but peppers displayed in a very beautiful ornamental way. And I thought, oh, I love that idea. You know, a theater of peppers. I just think that's a great idea.
Yeah. Yeah. Just so many awesome, and I'll have to check out Klaus too. Brampton Gardener was saying that she adores Klaus. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm gonna have to check that out for sure, that channel. And but yeah, I mean, just I suppose that, and again too, I love growing plants basically, you know, and especially food bearing plants. There's a lot I haven't grown, a lot I like to try to grow. And one of the things I talk about too is I'll grow things even though I don't eat them, even though I don't like them,
That's good.
because I know someone who does, and I know someone who will take the harvest.
So give me an example of that. What do you grow that you don't like to?
I love growing eggplant plants. Eggplant plants are probably one of the coolest. I don't know. They're just so
gorgeous. They're just gorgeous.
And watch out, some of them they're pretty spiky too, and you can get yourself caught.
Yeah.
But yeah, so they got they got this really beautiful characteristic, but at the same time they can get you too. You know what I mean? And then they got
okra. Okra will do that too.
Oh yes, okra is another one of those ones in the same category. Is I'm not necessarily, there's a few things I like with okra, and there's a few things I like with eggplant, but in general, not really things I really enjoy eating altogether. So I'll give them to friends, and maybe they'll make something, and I'll try it, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But I do it for growing the plants, and again too, that kind of aesthetic beauty though too, that those various types of plants will bring to the space as well too. So you mix an eggplant in there with all these other things, and it just brings this pop to the garden space. Those big bulby purple fruits, or you get some of the cool white ones, so you got those white fruit, just
I
love them.
hear you. And then you mix in the different textures, and some of them have that kind of anthropomorphic quality where they're almost like little animals or something, and you can ascribe animal characteristics to them. I remember once I grew a climbing new pearl tomato up a trellis where a rose had been, and it reached practically all the way to the top. And I thought, all those little yellow flowers just look like little tiny yellow Tweety birds. Tweety bird woodstocks, up and down. And I just love the analogies that you can bring.
Yes, it's great. Right on. Okay, well, now I got to turn this interview back around here. What are some of your favorite things to grow, Linda?
Okay.
What are some of your favorite plants?
I love herbs. So I love growing herbs. And in the summertime, I love it because no matter how hot it gets, you can always grow basils. And I grow practically every type of basil because they just thrive here. It's very, very productive. I love pesto, so I grow lots of that. I love dill this time of year. I love thyme. I love rosemary with I love the sensuality of herbs. They're gorgeous. I like to use them in cut flower arrangements and obviously bring them into the kitchen, but I just like being out and amongst them when I'm working in the garden because it just, they're just so fragrant, and they're
sensory. It's just a sensory.
Yes,
I
very.
don't want to say overload, but sensory load. It's just
Yes,
great,
it
you know.
is.
It's
It just really titillates all of your senses.
yeah.
This time of year, I just love growing greens. I love my two
Mm,
favorite spring things are arugula and French breakfast radishes.
yeah.
Those are my two things that I really, really look forward to in the spring, and just, spring greens in general.
Yeah, I
Uh,
love French breakfast.
yeah, I love Latin kale. Just kind of the broad spectrum. I grow some edible flowers too, nasturtiums and some things like that. And I really like to, I just really like to mix them. So I would say, but as a category, I love the concept of fresh daily. No matter what, even in the winter time, there's practically always something that I can go out and cut from my garden.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I was actually part of my winter cleanup as I'm moving into spring right now is getting my whole herb garden set up just right out here in the front area, which is just right out of the kitchen. So, perfect little kind of kitchen herb garden we've got out there. But getting them all kind of cleaned up and spaced up and thinking about what do I want to add this year to kind of, increase the space and get more variety in there and everything too. So again, too, herbs are really one of those things I've actually just kind of got into just a little bit more so over these last couple of seasons, and just really enjoying my herb garden.
Yeah, and they're great for small space gardening. If you
Mhm.
don't,
Containers for herbs, definitely, and that's what we're doing too. Is I can't, a lot of them can be really invasive and
oh yeah,
or grow over a bit too much. So I find if we can kind of contain them a little bit in containers, we can contain the size,
yeah.
and we can, kind of.
Yeah, I will never grow mint because it's abundant in so many of my neighbors' gardens. So
Oh
I'm
yeah, yeah. You got
not
plenty to
doing
get from, huh?
yeah, yes, definitely. And then just the things that attract the pollinators
Mm.
is just so much fun. And
Yeah, you'll never see more bees in your life than if like you let your oregano go to seed
oh,
or
I
something like that. I mean, just those
know.
herb flowers for some reason just get the bees just
Yeah.
humming.
And then they have so many functional applications as well as edible ones, using thyme or golden oregano or even certain kinds of chamomile, and growing them as ground covers or as surface plants, or just in a novel way. I just recently potted up several very ornate planters with nothing but thyme. And the tapestry that you can get with low growing thymes is just absolutely beautiful.
Yeah.
And I like experimenting in that way with them and creating beautiful effects and beautiful mosaics. And I love it when one kind of plant grows up through another kind of plant. I love that. Uh, what is it that people like? They'll grow beans, up corn stalks or something like that.
Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah, where you're incorporating the plants themselves, and
Yes,
corn stalks are great for that sort of thing. The three sisters, they call it, right?
yes, the three
Where you get
sisters.
the
Very
squash rolling
good.
around on the bottom and
Yeah,
the beans
yeah,
growing up the corn, and they're
yeah,
all doing a little bit of a job. The squash is shading out the soil, and
yes.
beans are in the corn or the trellis for the bean. It's just great. I
Yeah,
love that.
something else is creating nutrients for the soil, and everything has a time and a place and a purpose, and it all comes together, and nothing is mutually exclusive, and there's just great
Yeah.
synergy between everything.
All right, let's see. There was a question just a little bit earlier. I wanted to jump in here for you real quick. I think kind of runs in this line of questioning. What do you grow now or last year that struggles even with care? Question from Wickshire.
Well, I would say one thing that I plant every year, and as soon as it gets hot, it doesn't like it anymore. But I have them every year, and that's nasturtium. So
Oh,
I did a talk recently out in California, and they just grow like weeds there. And here, they'll grow, but they'll grow for a very limited amount of time. And then it gets too hot and they're just done, but I still have to have them. So for me, yes, I struggle, but the struggle is worth it. Uh,
yes.
yeah, the struggle is worth it. I plant, hundreds and hundreds of tulips every year. And people often say, well, is it worth it? Because I replant them every year. And well, I guess it's a struggle because you do have to replant them every year, but nevertheless, the joy that it gives me over not only when they're in bloom, but the joy they provide to everyone who passes by and the beautiful pictures that I have to look on through the winter. But I think in Oklahoma, almost anything can struggle, because what I have learned here, I talk a lot with local gardeners here, and what we have basically observed in general is that it's just harder and harder to get things established.
Yeah.
So when I started gardening 35 years ago, it was much easier to get things established so that they could endure and survive a very hot summer or a very cold winter. Now, because our extremes are so much more frequent and so extreme, it's harder to just get things established because we don't have reliable rainfall and there's big temperature shifts. So I think that's, that's something. And then quite frankly, everything in the summertime is a struggle to grow because it just gets so prohibitively hot here. And that requires a lot of water. And sometimes we're on water rationing. So I save most of my true gardening efforts for spring and fall. And I kind of just hide out in the air conditioning like everybody else in the summer. So, but we do have a long growing season that extends, it starts early and it extends long into the fall. So that's a good thing.
Yeah, in that case, we're pretty similar climates as well too. I got a nice long growing season, but again, it can get just really, really hot.
Yeah.
I mean, we 110s, we had so many of those this last year. It was just stacked on each other. And then if it does cool down, we get a nice cool like 96, 95.
Yes.
For a day or two, and then right back up there again. Oh man. And similar though for me, like right now, I mean, I'm dealing with this, and this is kind of the case. I mean, this is a really difficult time for gardeners because of all of these different climate changing aspects of how and what things are doing. Is it, and it's been really up and down, especially for me over the last couple of years, especially with our tomatoes.
Yeah.
Everybody loves growing tomatoes. We got to have tomatoes. And, once that switch hits and we start getting those, high, mid to high 90s, into the hundreds, those tomatoes are just done. They don't deal with it very well.
And I think it requires us to kind of change. We have to have a paradigm shift. So for me, when I grow tomatoes, I try not to even so much think of them as a summer crop anymore, though that would be nice. But when mine really start becoming prolific is when it starts to cool down in the fall.
Yeah.
And if the plant is still intact and hasn't, has survived spider mite and everything else, then I can really cut them back, give them a good feed. And for me, they are most prolific in the fall, in the early fall. And so sometimes it's not just a matter of planting practices, but it's a matter of making mental shifts based on what's happening around you.
Yep. And then again, too, it's just about testing and trying different things and seeing what can happen. For me, I'm trying to get mine out just a little bit earlier this year. So, if there's going to be a frost or something like that, I'll just have to go out there and deal with it and do some protecting and try to do that so I can hopefully get some good established, strong plants so that if I don't get anything early in the season or early in the summer, then all I'm really trying to do is just get a well-established, strong plant that can bear out the summertime. And like you said, go for that fall, those fall crops.
Yeah. Increasingly, I think I've always said it's true of Oklahoma, but I think it's true of many other areas now. And there's really only two gardening seasons. There's before the heat and after the heat. And to the extent you can kind of get things in and establish before that heat hits and wedge it in between the last frost date and before the temperatures in the 90s arrive, that's kind of like that window of time that you have to find to
Yep.
be successful. And that's where keen observation makes so much difference. Just observe what's going on around you. And the first thing I do every morning, you know, they tell you not to look at your mobile device first thing in the morning, but the first thing I do is I check the 10-day forecast
Yep.
to see what's ahead and
Exactly.
what's coming up, because it's so influential in helping you determine what you're going to do in the garden.
Yeah, yeah, definitely looking ahead, making sure you're on top of that stuff. And then really ultimately when it comes down to it, it's just now kind of a year-to-year experience. Things are changing, and the best we can really do, and I think you even mentioned this too about something that you put together, but I always encourage people to write this information down, especially new gardeners. Create garden journals,
Yes.
create notes, take, when did you see your last frost this year? When did you seed out your different varieties of things, and just keep track of all that sort of stuff, because really that's going to be your best sense of knowledge is what you've already kind of been experiencing.
It's creating your own Old Farmer's Almanac.
Yeah.
Just observing what's, okay, for example, here, when does the forsythia bloom? Well, now it's consistently blooming 2 weeks earlier than it did, 5 years ago. Okay,
Yep.
when do you see the first whatever? And that consistently changes. It used to be that I wouldn't see my first, say, tulip bloom until around St. Patrick's Day. Well, now I see them 1st of March. And so accordingly, all that kind of shifts your whole calendar in one direction or another.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Again, too, just those garden challenges and the variations of growing and gardening, whereas they could be a challenge and there could be challenges, but again, too, you also mentioned this is that those challenges are also part of the fun in some ways too, right? I mean,
it's just so analogous to life.
mhm.
The thrill of victory and the agony of defeat. And if you're a gardener, you just have to garden, and you just figure out a way to do it, because your soul just tells you you have to do it. So you'll figure out a way, and there's an upside to everything, I guess. So it's just trying to look at it in a certain way. And boy, after the hardest of summers, that's horrific. But boy, I sure then welcome those first cool temperatures in the fall. So without hardship, you can't appreciate, the contrast.
Exactly. It just and that's a great thing from season to season, and for all the new gardeners out there just getting started, it's all a part of the joy, and you just look forward to each and every new season that you have ahead of you, and just take the things that we learn from season to season, grow. For me, I say I always grow plenty, so I know that in the long run that I'm going to have something ultimately, whether something works or doesn't work throughout our whole experience in the season. But real quick here, as we're winding down, I just wanted to jump right into and talk about your channel. And it's one of the things that again we've touched on a little bit too, is this getting to share this garden experience with other people, and to take people along with our garden adventures. What inspired you, for one, to get started with your channel and to share your things online on YouTube, and where are things today and where are they going?
All right. Well, I think, as you probably discovered, none of it is intentional. One thing begats another thing, which begats another thing, and one thing leads into another. So I started years ago it all starts with the garden. I just started growing a garden, and I'm very design driven. I'm a self-taught gardener. I'm a self-taught garden designer, and I'm very design driven. And so I think first I started a garden that was then noticed by the local community and then the national one. and it was on lots of garden tours in I don't know how many national magazines. And then I started doing TV. And after I started doing TV, I started writing for magazines and things. And then I started sharing on Instagram. And I was probably one of the first people that on Instagram started doing these 1-minute tutorials. Now lots of people do them. But so I started there. And then I was also by that time working with the Southern Living Plant Collection, and I was writing for different publications. And then I think, and this is that, out of everything bad comes some good, I guess. My Instagram account was hacked. And I had to, for a period of time before it was restored, I had to go to another platform. And so I went to YouTube, and then YouTube just kind of blew up. And gardening people and gardening media people are very generous, and we like to share what we can about other avenues for garden education. And so it was shared a lot. And so I started doing that, and you can find me on YouTube at Linda Vater. Just search my name, and more stuff that you'll want to know will come up. I've got 2 books out. I recently spoke at the Indianapolis and Oklahoma City Home and Garden shows. I do a lot with Garden Gate magazine and Southern Living. I had a QVC product line for a while that was garden related. So there, I have a newsletter. Just anywhere and everywhere. And if you just Google my name, whichever way you want to get my content, there's probably a way to receive it.
Right. Awesome. Yeah, so much great stuff. I really love your videos. I love your garden space again for for that reason that we talked about just a little bit earlier, is that we've got these really public facing spaces that, I just think are just so wonderful.
Yes.
And I just love those type of gardens. Again, it just brings me a smile whenever I'm driving anywhere, no matter where I'm at, and I'm driving by somewhere, and I see someone who's just done something so magnificent with their space, and doing it in a way that's sharing it with everybody else is just so amazing and awesome.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, very much so.
So awesome. Again, thank you so much for joining with us today on the Let's Get Growing show.
I thoroughly enjoy it. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah. Again, too, just another great conversation. I love where these discussions go. That's one of the fun things about being able to do this on YouTube, is to not just meet new people and get to hear about their stories and all of that sort of stuff. It's just, it's these wonderful conversations that we get to have all around gardening and growing things. I mean, how better can it be, right?
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. And again, thank you so much for what you do, because it's just so important.
Well, it's awesome again, too. And I really look forward to having you back on the show here sometime, too. Such a great conversation. So thanks again, Linda. And we'll see you here in just a minute. All right. How awesome was that? Just a great conversation with Linda Vater. And getting to talk about, I go into these conversations. I've got a few questions that I'm thinking about asking, and it's just, to me, just is so amazing where it kind of goes. You just get started, and when you got such a passion for growing, and when you love gardening so much, the conversation just going. I keep growing and talking all afternoon, but we can't really do that here. We can't keep everybody all day long as much as we would like to, but just a really wonderful conversation with not just Linda Vater here, where you can get links down below to her channel, but also check out the link below to Rochelle's channel, Brampton Gardener, as well too there. And thank you all so much too here for joining with us today. And if you can too, be sure to hit that like button, hit the thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and share with all of your gardening friends. And also to be sure to come and join with us here on the show tomorrow for our Sunday edition. We will have joining with us Rachel Andorfer from the Oxheart Gardening channel on YouTube. We're going to have a fun discussion on getting our gardens started for the season. So come join with us again tomorrow for our Sunday edition of the show. And then again, too, be sure to come and join us next week. We're going to have joining with us on the show. This is going to be a fun show. This is going to be interesting. Bring your questions, bring your thoughts, all that sort of stuff. But let's keep it cool and nice. We've got with us Professor Kathy Martin from Norfolk Plant Sciences. And we're going to talk all about the tomato that she has developed that's causing such a big stir in the gardening world. So we'll get down and have a great conversation with her and find out all about that as well, too. We will have joining with us Nicole Smith from Nicole Smith Gardening will be joining with us for the show next week as well, too. So really excited about having her on the show with us. And next week, too, for our Sunday edition, you got to come join us. We do have with us Gardener Scott Wilson from Gardener Scott channel joins with us every second Sunday of the month to answer all of your gardening questions. So really excited about next Sunday's show as well, too. So definitely be sure to join with us for our show tomorrow and next week as well. It's been great to have all of you here on the show, and we'll see all of you next week.